I've been using Canon since 2010. I bought my first camera, Canon 60D, way back then. Loved it, have lived in the Canon space ever since. And just last week, I switched to Sony. Sony has evolved into a real player in the video camera space. They've really taken themselves to a new level. In 2022 and beyond, I absolutely love what I'm seeing out of Sony cameras, and thus, I had to buy. Just last week, I bought a Sony a7 III. Now this camera's a few years old now, but it was perfect for my needs. And in this video, I want to briefly take you through the reasons why I'm making the switch from Canon to Sony. Let's do it. The first reason I went with a Sony camera is price. The Sony a7 III came in at around $2,000. That's a great price for what I'm getting out of the a7 III. When I compared it to a camera like the Canon EOS R5, well, that's gonna cost me about double, if not more, than the Sony a7 III. And I'm getting a lot of the same features, which we'll get into a little bit later. Overall, Sony's cameras, their lenses, the bodies themselves, were a much cheaper price value for the same type of quality and, honestly, in some cases, better quality than what I was getting out of Canon. So when it came to price, Sony was exactly the place I needed to be. The next difference was size. I found that the Sony cameras were a little bit smaller. Now, with mirrorless nowadays, everything's a little bit smaller. It's much better for travel. When you're comparing old DSLRs to mirrorless cameras, the difference really is quite big. But in this case, the Sony a7 III was the perfect size for me. The next difference was video capability. I really love what Sony has to offer in their cameras for video nowadays. There were two things that I was really looking for in my camera purchase. I wanted 4K at 24 frames per second, ideally full frame, and I also wanted the ability to shoot 120 frames per second at 1080p. That was something that the EOS R could not do, so I had to check that off the list. The EOS R5, which remember was coming at over 2 times the price of the a7 III, well, that did have full frame 4K ability, even 4K at 60 frames, also had the 120 at 1080, but again, that price point was just way too high. And so when I compare the two side by side and I'm looking at something like the EOS R and the a7 III, the Sony really was the place to be. Sony is ahead in the video capabilities on a lot of their cameras, and I just had to go with it in this situation. Next is gonna be compression. Sony has a really nice compression, especially on their 4K files. We're talking about 100 megabits per second of footage, whereas Canon equivalent at 4K is shooting a motion JPEG. This is a really heavy file, and these files are coming at 500 to 800 megabits per second. That's just a little bit too big for me, especially if I'm taking this camera out on the road, I wanna shoot, I wanna travel, and I don't wanna fill up a massive hard drive when I'm out doing something or capturing a lot of footage. So Sony, again, with their compression and their MP4 output of a 4K file, was exactly what I wanted. Next is color. Now this is a tough one. I've always said that Canon has the best color output, the best color science when it comes to video for any camera out there. And you know what? I still think that's true. However, before buying this camera and before deciding on Sony over Canon, I looked at a couple videos and I saw Parker Walbeck.
Color science, color science.
They look exactly the same, but...
Now, see, if you notice how the focus pull on B was a little bit...
B is the Sony this time.
A is Canon and B is Sony.
Sony A, Canon B.
I'm gonna go A Canon, B Sony.
That made me feel more confident going with a Sony camera and stepping away from those Canon colors that we all know and love. And I've really loved the way that the Sony colors have popped since I picked up the a7 III. The final reason that I've switched from Canon to Sony is the lenses. Sony's E-mount is just magical. It's got so many different pieces of glass that can fit on the E-mount. We're talking Sigma, who's making E-mount lenses. Tamron's making E-mount lenses. So many more companies, and most of Sony's cameras fit on the E-mount. The E-mount lens is perfect. Sony is gonna allow me to pick up a ton of different lenses at great prices, and they'll all work on my camera. Now, I did have a few Canon EF lenses. The problem is, if I was gonna switch to a Canon mirrorless camera, My EF lenses wouldn't have helped anyway. I would have needed to get the RF lenses. Canon has so many different mount systems, it just doesn't work the same, whereas Sony has that E-mount that's gonna carry me through all the different cameras I could pick up. It's gonna give me these third-party lens options, and there's so many options that are gonna work on my mirrorless Sony camera, and I'm really happy about that. In conclusion, I wanted to give you a couple reasons why I'm gonna go with Sony instead of Canon from now on. I really love where they're headed in 2022 and the future. I think the Canon's falling a little bit behind in some of these video capabilities and some of their mirrorless lens options, and I think Sony's exactly where I wanna be right now in 2022, and again, looking forward. So let me know in the comments what you think about Sony versus Canon versus other brands. I appreciate all of the likes, all of the subscribers, and we'll check you back in the next one.